Hey guys, so we should be live now. Haven't used OBS in a little bit, so hopefully it's working. If you guys can just let me know if the sound and video is okay. That would be excellent. Hi EB, and you say booyah. Thomas Bennett, basic trainer. Hey guys, so we should be live now. So it looks like the video is working. Just came up on my end. So always quite a bit of lag. I hope everyone's doing well today. Let's see. So, yeah, if people want to start asking questions about anything, really, obviously questions about Pokemon cards, Pokemon card market, can ask me questions about other TCGs, CCGs, video games, broader economic questions, whatever people feel like asking, I will try to get to a number of them. So generally how we do this is, for those who haven't been here before and as people kind of start to come in, I go through the questions in the chat sort of one at a time. Once in a while I miss some. Sometimes I skip questions for a variety of reasons if I don't want to answer it, but usually it's because the question's already been asked or there's something private about it or something that I don't feel would be best to answer. Definitely try to be transparent and answer pretty much everything. What else? I guess a couple of channel messages. So definitely we'll be trying to do these a little bit more regularly again. Definitely starting next month. Next weekend, we'll have the, I believe it's next weekend, yeah, we'll have the Patreon sort of like deep dive analytics video that Dan from Gotta Catch 'Em All and I will be running together. It's something that we do monthly. Costs $10 a month, people who are interested. We have also started a Discord, private Discord to go along with that where people can discuss and engage. We'll also be hopping in there periodically in chat to talk to people, hang out with people, and look at, answer questions and also look at things like auctions. We're planning on maybe, you know, when sort of big auction nights happen. We just were in last night with a bunch of people just kind of watching the golden auctions and the PWCC auctions go, because there were some really big ones in there that both Dan and I were looking at and bidding a little bit on. So, but as far as just like the this channel's plans, try to be a little bit more consistent, just very busy. So I think that for me, starting in the new year and over the next few months, one of my goals is going to be to figure out exactly like what the optimal level of engagement is here in terms of, like, you know, how many videos a week, how many videos a month, and get on a little bit more of a schedule. That's sort of one of my goals. It's not really the priority to figure out that schedule right now for me, but it'll be something that I get to eventually. Definitely on the to-do list. So really appreciate as people start to come in, more and more people, you guys hanging out with me on Sunday. I hope everyone's doing really well today and that things are going well for you in your life and that you're enjoying collecting and the hobby. And I guess without too much further ado, I will start jumping into some questions so we can get to as many as possible today. All right, so EB has our first question here. EB asks, what do you think will happen to Modern prices, Celebrations, and Evolving Skies, particularly in the lead up to the holiday season? Yeah, so like everyone wants to know when we should be buying these things. You know, I'm in the same boat as someone who, you know, is not. I'm not in love with any of these sets or any of these modern Pokemon. I don't feel like I strongly need to collect any of these sets, and I'll be, just me personally, I'll be perfectly comfortable missing a lot of these sets for at least a while. And Pokemon's always going to make more new really cool sets. So unless there's a certain release or a certain set that really, really jumps out to me, I'm personally just comfortable being patient. But I really understand that for a lot of people, and for me too, I would like to buy all of these sets and own a little bit all of these sets to open and enjoy, and also to collect and maybe even invest in a little bit. So it's really natural that everyone's asking questions like, when should I buy Evolving Skies now? Should I wait till second and third and maybe fourth and fifth wave, however many waves are going to be of a product like that? What should I do, Jake? What should I do? And my honest answer is like, try not to stress that much about it. I think that if buying it at 170 versus 120 is going to like really, really break your bank, maybe don't buy it at all. And that might feel a little bit unfair, but and there are going to be certain people in situations where those cards are so important, like if they're buying that for their kids and they really want to get a holiday present or something like that, and money's really tight, and the difference between like, I definitely understand like the difference between $50 could be the difference between something important, food, paying rent, paying off bills, all these types of things. So there are going to be a certain number of people who that really is important to. I think the majority of people buying that product, though, this is a luxury good. At that point, it really becomes more from people who they just don't want to get that feeling of losing money. They don't want to buy at 170 and then feel like an idiot when it comes back down to 120. And my question, or I think thing for you guys is like, it really probably doesn't matter that much, and the stress and anxiety you're having over it probably isn't worth having. And I personally would just be patient and wait and see how much is printed and how many waves come out. But if you decide to buy a 170 right now and you open it for fun and you lose some money, it's really not the end of the world. I think for people who are looking to like invest in it and get a ton of it, I just would avoid it completely. Personally, I think the risks are way too high. The uncertainty is way too high. And I'd much rather, not a financial advisor here, but I'd much rather be putting my money into S&P 500 or something. So at this stage, now I think if you have access to distributor pricing, and if you can get product like that at $80 to $90, it becomes a lot more attractive. That's sort of always been my stance since prices have gone up a lot. Before that, my stance was it barely even made sense. Like, stores barely were making money on a lot of modern Pokemon product. They were making $5-10 per booster box, and they would have to sell lots and lots and lots of it to, in order to make a profit. We're obviously in a different time in Pokemon right now, and so people who have access to distributor pricing are really getting rewarded, and I think that's perfectly fine and makes sense. They've been engaged in this hobby and been engaged with distributors and building their businesses for many years, and they're getting rewarded for the huge surge. So, what do I think is going to happen? It is all going to depend on how much Pokemon prints, and if nobody knows the answer to that, and nobody knows exactly when and how much, or I should say specifically how much each of these, waves are going to be. From my connections, in terms of people who have stores, people who deal in this and sell a lot of product, what they're saying, most of those people say wait, because they think that they're going to get a lot more and that prices will probably come down. But demand might be higher and more sustainable on this than it was for Vivid Voltage, for example, where we saw Vivid Voltage go up to 250 and then crash back down because of, huge reprints. That something like that could easily happen with Evolving Skies again, or Pokemon may decide that they're not going to print as much. And this set is probably going to be more popular. The set has a lot more chase cards and I think a lot more interesting things, particularly after Amazing Rares sort of went down and kind of crashed in value because there were so many of them. So that would be my thinking on that. Celebration's going to be interesting. Obviously, there seems to just be so little of it so far. Prices are so crazy on certain items. There are also so many different celebration items. Are there going to be some items that are really good investments? Maybe. that Pokemon doesn't print a lot of? Are there going to be others that Pokemon prints and continues to print a ton of? Are going to be some promos go up? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. If you want to, gamble and speculate on any of that, I think that's fine, thing to do. It's nothing that I would personally be doing. And I just don't find any of that enjoyable. I think part of it is that. I think if you find all of that sort of speculation and wondering how much is Pokemon going to print, how much are they not going to print, when are they going to print, I find all that kind of stressful and just not very enjoyable. So for me, I would buy, if you can get some product at some really low amounts and just sit on it and relax and just be like, I'm going to hold this for a long period of time and I'm not going to stress out about it, and I'm going to bet on the fact that these sets are going to be popular in the future, and I'm going to bet on the fact that Pokemon is going to continue to be popular and there's going to be interesting cards, which I think are both good bets, generally strong bets. I think all of that's reasonable. So, sorry that I can't, crystal ball it on specifics, but it's a great question, and obviously we all, there's so many people who are wondering that and placing bets at different price points. Car 1988 says, what do you think about the potential of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Lost art promos? Do you like how they are printing uncensored art? I don't really know about them. My apologies. There are just too many things to keep track of in all these different TCGs, so I'm not sure about that. That one I missed. But I can maybe look it up and have an answer for you next week or something like that, or in a couple weeks. PokeJohn says, why do you have to come on during Eagles games? Sorry. That's true. Maybe we should move this, and I too like to watch football, so maybe we should move these to a different day during football season. No offense taken if people want to go watch football and come and watch this again later. You can also drop a question and, come back in later and get it answered, type of thing. Did I get a special delivery Bidoof? No, I don't have any of those. Powerlifting 101 says, what's your opinion on battle styles? Rudy thinks it's going to be moving soon, since there's going to be no supply for a while. I don't know. Truthfully, I don't know. I don't like. I worry. So I think that there's a lot of. How do I want to answer this? I would just be really careful buying things based on what other people say, and buying things when you don't see the value there. And so what I mean by that is, great to listen to Rudy. I would listen to whatever Rudy says, and I would consider what he says, and when he's willing to share behind the scenes type stuff, like he's talking to his distributor and that there seems to not be a wave coming for a while, and there's probably not going to be that much, and absolutely powerlifting, right? Like that's valuable information, and can definitely, there not being enough supply may definitely affect the market. But Rudy is not a Pokemon collector, and doesn't probably understand what people like or have a good sense of what people are going to like over time. In Magic, it's based on playability. For the most part. There might be a little bit of collector on the looks of cards and the coolness of cards, and obviously the winners tend to be when playability meets coolness of card, and then cool versions of a playable card, etc., etc. But it's a very different game. It's a very different, value comes from a very different place, potentially, and I think in the Magic community than it does in the Pokemon card community. And so I would just be careful. Again, I worry items like that and things like that, they're just being bought up a lot and just stored and not necessarily opened and enjoyed and appreciated. And I would just be I would be worried about how much growth an item like that could have and then how long it would take. That being said, would I be shocked if Pokemon is not printing enough of any of this? Pokemon continues to go up in value, and those boxes are $150, $200 in a year? No. Anything can happen right now. And so, unfortunately, I just don't have more like helpful answers to that. Anyone saying anything with like great confidence, I don't know where that confidence is coming from. I will say with Rudy, to say that he thinks it's like at least going to go up in the short term with supply waning, that's obviously a logical argument and makes sense as long as like demand keeps up and the people who are buying all these boxes at $90 and then $100 to get the price up over $100, actually hold their items and don't try to like dump or get out of it and put it into something else. I also worry that there's just going to be a lot of wallet fatigue in general on the modern market. In Pokemon, on the modern MTG market, there's just so many products and there's so much to buy, and I worry that there just isn't going to be enough money to go around. And at one point, Pokemon is going to print enough, probably, or the demand is going to come back enough that there is going to be way more product than necessary, and there's going to be some things that I think probably do really badly, but we may be nowhere near that. That could be like many years down the line. So I just don't know. Norpoke Collector says, what do you think about the upcoming new art illustration contest? Do you think it will be like the old days, Art Academy, Illusion Arts, etc.? I don't know. They have different sorts of contests that don't always have like trophy type cards that are given out in terms of like very exclusive cards. They could just mass produce a winner's card or a winning art card, like the Gardevoir that they did fairly recently. Nick says, what's your opinion on Prime cards, Jake? I think they're fantastic investments. I guess, but I will say it, Norpoke Collector, if they are rare and there are only 100 of each in these types of things, they're going to be very, very sought after. And I think great pickups and great long-term holds. Nick says, what's your opinion on Prime cards, Jake? I think they're fantastic investments, but I'd love to hear your opinion. Thanks. Yeah, I think that they're okay. People have mixed opinions on them. Definitely the numbers on them are pretty low. There doesn't seem to be a lot of supply out there. There doesn't seem to be a lot more being graded. They're difficult to grade for the most part in PSA 10. Some are easier than others. They're basically, to me, very similar to the Level X's, except just not as good. Because to me, they don't have quite as good of a look, quite as good of an identity, and they're not quite as old. And there just aren't as many of them across a number of different sets and don't have, to me, quite as strong of an identity. But they're similar. So I would say a little bit, good. I think probably, it's going to be very difficult to predict how those are going to do versus, for example, your first ever full art cards from black and white into X and Y era. Some of the ones that may end up having fairly small prints because Pokemon didn't print a ton of a lot of those sets. So I'm not really sure how all of it's going to shake out. I'd be careful investing heavy into primes or anything like that, particularly because they're already fairly expensive, and I have tons. I have hundreds. So, but I still like them. The problem, Nick, is there just isn't anything that's really that cheap. There isn't anything that I look at, just being completely honest with everyone, that I look at the market and say, oh my god, like, how could that be so cheap? Unfortunately, it's more like I look at the market and I think a lot of vintage is like very well priced and I think it's like very reasonable to purchase it. And then I look at the market and I see a ton of modern stuff that's just insanely overpriced, like thousands of dollars more than I would pay for it. And that's my personal, view of the market right now. Any opinions on investment on Grand Party Trainer? Yeah, I think Grand Party is overvalued. personally. I don't think it's that great of an art, but Gary and SM Pratt and lots of people have talked about how they think it's really great art. It's a subjective thing, obviously. I think that my personal opinion of that card is there's a ton of them. Now it has the stamp or the logo, not stamp, but the logo of trophies of some of these, like a Trophy Kangaskhan type logo on it, which I think does add some appeal to it, but for me, way overvalued. I'd much rather spend a few $1,000s on an Art Academy card that's actually rare than a card like that isn't very rare, and to me doesn't, honestly, I don't even like the art that much, and but that's very subjective. So people say that they really like the art, and a lot of people say that they really like the art, so I will take their word for it. But that's one of those cards that I don't see, just personally, I don't see the value in it as compared to some other things because of the lack of rarity, first and foremost, and then, I guess subjectively, which really doesn't matter what my opinion doesn't matter. It's just one person's subjective opinion, but I share it to show that, like, think for yourself, right? If you look at that card and you think it's beautiful art, then that's great. If you look at that card and you don't think it's that great of an art, but you hear Gary and SM Pratt and a lot of people tell you that it's really good art, don't just be like, oh, it's great art, or everyone thinks it's great art, so it must be, right? There can be differences of opinion, and that's why I'm sharing my opinion, not because I think my opinion is important from my subjective opinion of the art. What is important is the objective rarity and the fact that I don't think universally everyone thinks that card is so great looking. Black Ash Ketchum says, that being said, it's just because of the high price point that I feel that way. I think it's a great card, and I think it's an important card, but there are a lot of them, and there are a lot of them at all sorts of different grade levels. You can get them at pretty low grades, you can get them pretty high grades, and that's a card that I think will always be around. And there's probably, that to me is more like in the Misaki card area to me than it is like towards the trophy like things that I really view as trophy cards. And Misaki cards are trophy cards, and these cards are trophy cards in the sense that they're given out, right? They were given out, and but depends how we define trophy cards. But in terms of like the really high end, to me those cards have gone priced a little bit high as compared to some other options that I think the rings are better, for me, and I think there are much less of them. Even like just the regular victory ring that has like 380 probably distributed in the world and only 22 in the pop. That card selling for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 is just like a much better buy to me than just for an example. Now, if those cards were going for $15,000, those rare ones, and then this card was going for $3,000, $2,000, then that would make a lot more sense. Black Ash Ketchum says, hey Jake, have you looked into Fortnite cards at all? Saw your interview with Geeked Out Collecting. Thanks. Not really. As you could tell by that interview, I don't really know too much about it. I was aware of them. I looked at them a couple of times, and I thought about picking up some boxes a while ago. Just didn't really know enough about it. Didn't get around to it, and I shared some opinions there. Some of my concerns without having much knowledge. Like, I don't really have very much knowledge of it, and so those would be just my general concerns with any person coming to me and saying, hey, I think this new TCG or CCG or fairly new one is like very investable. So I think there are some things that there's potential huge upside in, like a Fortnite, particularly if these influencers and other people are starting to collect, and you start seeing kids collected, and they expand how much they print out to a lot more people, and then these original boxes are so much rarer and so much less printed than some of these newer ones. That's what you want to see. So definite potential there, but I'm just not I played Fortnite one time. It's just, and it didn't really do it for me personally. So I think for me, there's so many great things to invest in and collect in and enjoy that for me, it's just I'm fine sort of missing out on that Even if the upside is like really huge because so many kids are so obsessed with it, which I do think is there's potential. PokeJohn said, "Did you see the golden auction last night?" Yeah, we were watching it on Discord, and yeah, we're bidding a little bit on certain items. It was fun to watch. PokeJohn said that PSA 10 Zard was not a 10, and the prices showed. Yeah, I actually thought that the Charizard, so 2 PSA 10 first edition Charizard sold last night, and I thought that they did really well. And I think anyone who owns a PSA 10 first edition Charizard or owns a number of PSA 10 first edition anything kind of like WotC era would feel quite pleased with. I think with the fact that those Zards are really holding in price. I will tell you guys that like most of the PSA 10 first edition Zards look like those. So I don't even think of those as like that weak of 10s because a lot of them are fairly weak compared to like standards right now. So it's just something to mention. A lot of 10s have nicks. There are very few 10s that really looked very perfect. And to be honest, like most of those have already been attempted to cross over, or a lot of them have already been attempted to cross over at BGS. There's a reason why they've stayed at PSA 10s rather than becoming BGS 10s. Marcus Avalon said, "Hey Jake, hope all is well. Do you feel we have reached a decent bottom for WotC sealed booster boxes?" I think so. The booster boxes did not seem to do very well last night. Interestingly, like whereas Jungle and Fossil, the first edition sets sold, I don't know if they were like shill bid or something, but they sold so high, like way more than they're worth. So who knows in these auctions how they're going to go. But some of the boxes of like those sets and other sets were pretty low. There were a lot of them up for sale, and when a lot of those boxes are thrown up on auction all at once, it's obviously more likely that some of them are going to go pretty low considering how expensive those are, and there just might not be that much money, buying those. As I've said a lot on this channel, there's a lot of those in the world, and it's part of why I like the PSA cards over those boxes, because I know how many PSA cards there are, and I don't expect the PSA 10s to go up that much, where I know there are many thousands, tens and tens of thousands of those boxes left. And so it's tough. It's tough to decide like which one has more value. But do I think that it's a floor? What I would say is like I'm much more attracted to buying them right now. Right? When base set Unlimited, I made a lot of videos, when Base Set Unlimited hit $35,000, that booster box, just saying like that's insanity. With the amount that I know exists or have some idea of how many exist, it just seemed like, how is the market supporting value at that? And if people start selling, like there's no way that value can hold or go up at those prices. It's not that uncommon of an item. $35,000. Like, how many people in their 30s and 20s can afford a $35,000 box? I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a tremendous amount of money. As that comes down, when it gets more to like 15 to 20, and then I'm seeing Jungle and Fossil like around like 10, 11, 12, that's a much better buy. Like, that becomes much more attractive to me. And if I feel like people start to panic, that's when I would go back in and pick some of those up, and love to pick some of those up. Do I feel like we're there yet? Maybe not. I think that there's sort of a balance of people anxious and panicking, and a balance of kind of maybe some very bullish people who are continuing to buy. So, I don't know. I'm not. I guess I can speak for myself. I'm not at a point where I'm looking at these prices and I'm saying, like, I have to jump in. This is, like, an amazing time, and I should, like, sell as much as I can of anything else and jump back into Pokemon and buy everything up. I also don't feel like people making these purchases who can afford them at these prices are doing anything foolish. I think that it's perfectly understandable to take gambles at these prices from that investor perspective, and particularly if you really enjoy the items from that collector perspective. So I also think that modern seems to be what everyone talks a lot about online from what I see. And part of it's because it's hard to keep making vintage content because there are no more vintage sets. It just is what it is, and everything's been talked about already. And I feel like modern's the thing that's being introduced to people and talked over and over, and where a lot more people can afford it. And that's where I think a lot of the mania and irrational exuberance in the hobby still exists. I think vintage, there's a lot more pessimism and a lot more realistic perspectives on what these items are and what they can do, and a lot more fear and anxiety, actually. So that's where I feel, and when I'm talking about vintage, I mean high-end vintage, the top 1% of items. I'm not talking about like a PSA 7, a PSA 8 of any card, okay? Even first edition base cards. So that's where I would be at that, and I put all of these kind of sealed WotC boxes in that top 1% or so of items. Travel says, take care of yourself first, Jake. Your content is quality for this hobby. Quality over quantity. Appreciate that message. Timmy Investor says, what about WotC Japanese sets? They seem really underrated compared to the English first edition counterparts, especially from base set to Team Rocket. And I do want to, I want to say one more thing on the last point. I think that I feel very, very strongly about this, and I may turn out to be wrong, okay? But I feel very strongly about what I'm about to say. When I look at any booster boxes that are only 3-4 years old, and that's Japanese or English side, when I look at any of those booster boxes and I see them selling for $2,000, $3,000, would I rather own one of those booster boxes at $2,000 to $3,000 or one of these vintage booster boxes at 10, 11, 12? Much rather own the 10, 11, 12 vintage booster box. Much, 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 much rather. Like, the vintage booster boxes, to me, are multiple $1,000 items. Now, are they $12,000 items? Are they $6,000 items? I don't really know. But they're historical important items to this hobby. Okay? Pokekayun and CP6, and, there are a lot of sets I could name, are not important. And there might be people out there who are like, that's my very favorite set and my favorite thing in the hobby. And listen, I like Rating Collection, for example. I think it's cool. $3,000 for a box like that, to me, that's a $300 box. I'll just be completely honest. Like, that's how far off I am from the market, right? To me, it's a $300 to $500 box. I wouldn't ever pay more than $300 to $500 for that box as compared to so many other things as a collector. Not as an investor, not as someone who's speculating on what's going to go up and what's not going to go up. Just as a pure collector in this hobby and lover of these cards, I don't believe that any of those modern cards from the last 5 to even 10 years could mean nearly as much to the people, to anyone, as the WotC and the vintage stuff means to people in my generation. And it's a psychological argument. It's just based on the fact that those are from my childhood. I collected and enjoyed these cards when my parents were going through like a divorce, and I was going through like, sorry, they weren't going through a divorce, but I was dealing with my parents were divorced already. And let me just be careful. And I was dealing with going from one home to another and bouncing back and forth, and my dad were buying cards and whatever. I don't want to go too much into it, but they were very important to me in my childhood and my relationships with my dad, my parents, and my experience as a kid and playing the video game. And those feelings are associated whenever I see like a Shadowless card. And nobody has that, no adult has that experience when they look at, like, you could take the coolest looking card ever that's modern. It's impossible for them to have that type of relationship with that item already, unless there may be a few people out there who, like, a 4-year, 5-year Go set was, like, really crucial to them. They opened it and it really connected with them in an important time of their life, and it helped them deal with some trauma, and it has special value. So you can never say never, and there's going to be individuals out there who, I would never tell anyone that you don't love this or you don't really like this, but I want people to think the number of those people that feel that way about that. I feel like a lot of people love those sets or really hyped on those sets because they're worth a lot and because they made a lot of money, not because they actually really feel that strong of a connection to those products. That's my personal opinion. it's going to rub some people the wrong way for sure. But I really think I view saying that honestly as a bit of a public service announcement for people to at least reflect on that idea and understanding, and that this is what happens with like mania and hype and irrational exuberance, in my opinion, is that people just, whatever the last person paid on something, the next person just pays without really thinking. And don't get me wrong, like, I don't know what these vintage items should be worth right now. I don't, but when I look just as a collector at some of these modern items in PSA 10, selling for $1,400, even $500, $600, $700, $800, and then I look at some of these boxes going for thousands, even if there are only 10,000 of those boxes left, and there's no chance there's that little, because there's way, way more of those boxes than 10,000. I knew individuals with hundreds of those boxes, okay? They're just, yeah. I guess I sort of said it all, and I apologize if you own one and I'm talking negatively and I'm creating a narrative out there that's negative, but it is what it is. And I own a lot of those cards, and so I'm invested in some. Now I don't own a ton, but I own some, and I also own some Japanese sealed product and other sorts of things from those eras. So now, do I think that those boxes at $500, $600 makes sense to me? Yes. And that's a lot. Those boxes were $50 boxes at one point. That's still a 10x return for people who would have bought those initially. But they're $50 to $3,000. Right? That is, and I don't understand it outside of people just wanting to make money. When I see trophy cards, and when I see Wizards of the Coast cards, or original Nintendo EXR cards, or Gold Stars, or these really rare items going for many thousands, I say, wow, that's expensive, but I get it. I get it because they're really historical, crucial items to this hobby as a whole. When I look at these other items, maybe in 20 to 30 years they're important and crucial, but they're going for prices now that in best case scenario they should be going for in 20 to 30 years. So I'll stop going on and on about it. And again, I apologize. I hate, believe me, I hate having to say these things. Like, I don't want to talk negatively about any product, and I hope every product goes up in value. But it makes me feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes when and I don't understand what someone sees. And if anyone out there is watching this or in the community wants to be like, I paid $3,000-$4,000 for one of those boxes because it's so important to me, and it's much more important to me and my Pokemon, collection than something else. I'd love to hear your story, and I would have nothing but respect for you and admiration for you. Because if someone's buying those products at $3,000 to $4,000 for their collection because they love them and they value them at those prices, I'm on your side. Like, that's wonderful. That's why I buy things. I just have a hard time believing that's what's going on. And when I see all these YouTubers hyping them up and talking about them, and then, it concerns me. And I know that I hear this narrative that like YouTubers talk down on modern and that they're more positive on vintage. All of most of the vintage YouTubers I see are like fairly conservative-y types who are very like, be careful, be careful, be careful. And then I see a lot of the modern YouTubers being like the hype beasts, buy everything, everything's amazing. So I don't see that from the content I watch and from the people I engage and talk to. So I'll leave it there. Let's see what else we got. And I worry, oh God, I said I'd leave it there. And I worry that it's new people in the hobby who are buying these boxes at those prices, because I can 100% promise you none of my friends would touch any of those products with a 10-foot pole who have been here for 5-10 years. And it's not because we don't love those products and love Pokemon. It's because we see that and we think, what is happening? Okay. Timmy Investor, you said, what about WotC Japanese sets? They seem really underrated compared to the English first edition counterparts, especially from base set to Team Rocket. Honestly, I don't think anything's underrated right now. I think Japanese it was underrated at one point in Pokemon history. I think now for me, the prices make a lot more sense. I really love the English stuff. I also really love the Japanese stuff. I want both. Both has quite a bit of value, is what I would say. and there are pluses and minuses to each that I've talked about on this channel. So, PokeJohn said, "Do you have what I would suggest? What I would suggest is that you, because personally I think that a lot of those things are probably fairly reasonably valued. If you way prefer Japanese as a collectible, I would go after that. If you way prefer English, I would go after that. I do think that English has more upside because of the size of the market for it and the difficulty to grade a lot of those cards and the amount that I think is already graded. I would be more concerned with more Japanese mint stuff being out there, like gem minty type stuff being out there, than English. So I would be concerned about that, but I love Japanese. I own a lot too. I love it both. And the thing that frustrates me is like, I think that all of this insane speculation on Modern is having a really negative impact on the hobby, because people who love Modern, like me, I love Pokemon cards and Modern Pokemon cards. We can't buy it because it's stupidly priced, because it's way too expensive and it's nonsense. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that one, Pokemon isn't printing more of these things, and two, that people have gone kind of a little crazy, with it. And I just don't think people buying these things and speculating, and I just feel like it's people market manipulating and flipping to other flippers, and it's not good for anyone. To me, the really expensive stuff should be the really rare, historic, important stuff that's already been around for a long time. And I think some of those items are already probably too expensive for right now and will still probably come down, okay? But that's a healthy hobby when everyone can afford and engage in some of this modern stuff. And I've sort of avoided saying this because I feel bad. I feel bad saying negative things. I feel bad saying that prices are that people are spending so much on things and making negative comments on what people do. Because I strongly, in sort of a libertarian sense, believe that people should be respected as individuals and should be respected and encouraged to behave in a free market the way that they want. But I guess I see that, and then but I have these feelings about it, and I don't know. If I'm going to have a channel and they just come out and people ask me direct questions, it just sort of comes out. Okay. All right, L.A. James. Let's see. Oh, sorry. A few more questions before. PokeJohn says, do you have a favorite NFL team? Patriots, because I'm from New England, even though, they kind of annoy me in a lot of ways. But, and then I'm a humongous Tom Brady supporter, so I hope that he continues to have success. And I honestly would rather him win another one in Tampa Bay than the Patriots win this year. That's kind of how I feel, because I feel like the Patriots don't really deserve it and haven't really earned it right now, and I just want Tom to keep racking them up. Because I think he's the best player, the best competitor. His his mental, strength and focus and ability to win without having the physical tool. I think that should be inspiring to anyone. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Whatever you think about his personality, and the reason I love Tom has nothing to do with his personality. It just has to do with what he's been able to achieve. Is just so cool. I mean, it's so inspiring. I think anyone who loves sports, I would hope would feel that and understand what he's been able to achieve against all odds. It's unbelievable. Daniel said, I wonder if all these collectibles being bought up during these times will end up with mostly collectors or speculators. Yeah, so I think that there's a mix. But I think that particularly vintage, there's still people speculating and flipping in these markets all the time, all day, every day. But I think that over time, particularly some of the high-end stuff is finding its way to wealthier people and wealthier collectors who can afford to hold the items and don't want to sell and are valuing the items at these prices. And I've been tracking that part of the market really carefully, and there's been a lot less stuff recently coming up for sale. A lot less PSA 10 first edition holos. There, during the height And for about 8 months, there like at any one given time, there'd be like 4 PSA 10 first edition Dragon Knights up for sale, or sometimes 8. I saw 12 up for sale at times. Now it just feels like even those cards that are fairly common and have huge demand and often flip, like there are just less of them and much less of them coming up for auction. I think that that shows that the sellers are becoming more patient. But the question on the other end is, are there still buyers? And if there aren't buyers for those items, the prices will come down. They just won't come down as much, and they won't tumble in a panic like what we saw the last 6 months, where it was like 10 people just I need to get rid of this right away because I'm going to lose all my money. That type of attitude, I think, has left the market. I think people are more patient now. Let's see. Elliot James asked, best bang for your buck, Dragon Ball Super booster box to open for fun? I don't even know, honestly. I don't follow DBS closely enough and like the prices closely enough to know like which one is the most fun for the cheapest price. If you want to let us know, Elliot, I'd love to hear, and maybe we'll get some for the channel or something. Timmy Investor says, the funny thing is that most speculators become investors over time. That definitely can happen, and also collectors, as you were saying here. That absolutely can happen over time. Ooh, just lost my place. Scott Gaida, and apologize for saying your name wrong. Is it bad if my cards, or Gaita, is it bad if my cards are going to be auctioned at PWCC? Do you think they'll go for much lower than on eBay? Yeah, I don't know, Scott. For me, I think that like people putting their cards up in any of these auctions right now are taking a gamble. It's just the reality, and I don't know how it's going to work out. Last night, and this is the PWCC Premier auction, but similarly the Golden auction, right? Both of these, like there were a lot of items that went up. The trophy cards did extremely well. Like the Art Academy cards did extremely well last night. Really, really well. A full set of them sold at a very, very good amount. But then you had like a Jungle and Fossil set do extremely well. But then you had like some Skyridge stuff. It didn't sell that low, but a little bit low. And then you had some EX sets that I think did really well, and some Gold Stars that I think did really well. So there's a gamble and a risk when you throw it up in any place that isn't going to have a ton of exposure. But what options do we have? So if you really want to sell right now and you want to sell in an auction format and not just list it up, I mean, I think Z might be here in the chat. Z's, love Z, a friend of mine, love him and his wife, and just really hope their business succeeds and is amazing. He's trying to fill some of that void, and people have to decide, right, is the price point and I don't know exactly what he's going to charge or what he's charging, but is that worth it for them? Is that a good service? But it comes down to this point of like, where do we sell it right now for maximum exposure? There are too many different auction houses, and none of them are like the key one that happens every month that we're all gonna kind of go to and see. And so even if you have to pay higher fees for something like that, you might get a lot higher exposure, the prices might go much higher and it might be worth it. So we're just gonna have to see all of that goes. But it's really unfortunate in the short term for the card collecting community, and that goes well outside of just Pokemon into sports cards and everything else, that eBay and PWs, that this happened with eBay, because that was such a great place for us to go each month to both sell and buy and engage with the hobby. And it's unfortunate that happened. But in the long run, I don't think these things will matter. Now, what I would do if I were you in the short run, if you can, honestly, and if you don't need the money, I would probably not be selling unless I needed the money, or unless I felt that the cards were going to tumble in value. If you think the cards are going to tumble in value, and that has to be a personal decision, and they could, on your end, then it would make sense to quickly sell. But I think that there is a bit of a risk right now, that these things just won't have the same exposure and prices won't be as good. Catch 'em all collectibles. What's up? Dan says, how long after expiration will you eat Pokemon Oreos? Does the expiration date hurt their investment potential? Yeah, it's a good question. So funny enough, I saw your video and my girlfriend literally came back from the store without me asking and bought me some of those, bought me some minis and regulars. Right as I was like watching that video, came in with them. Just hilarious timing. So they're delicious. I love Oreos. They're amazingly good. I wasn't able to keep it sealed. Preston Doak said, Jake, I had roughly 16,000 worth of sealed products stolen from my storage unit in my apartment building. Oh my gosh. I already contacted police, landlord, and local card shops. Any other advice on what I can do? Oh, I'm so sorry, Preston. So, you know, if they're PSA cards, you can, and if they have obviously like numbers on them, so alerting people in the area to like what those specific things are. If there were anything that were unique about the boxes or about the PSA cards or even about the cards themselves, like if they had unique stickers on the boxes or, you know, unique even like holofoil swirl type patterns, you know, it gets really tough when we get into like more common ungraded cards to be able to track anything like that. You know, I'm really sorry that happened. It's a reality that there are people who steal for a variety of reasons, and I guess the best thing is to just you know, take some time and you know, try to sit with it and cope with it. And I think when you do that, you'll be stronger, you know, for it on the other end, but and you know, hopefully have you know, more resilience and ability to withstand the ugliness of the world and the ugliness of human behavior. You know, I'm a believer in that like when really ugly things happen to us, we can choose to, we have some choice. We can't completely choose this because we're not really in complete control of ourselves or our emotions, but we have some choice to use those events as a way to, okay, these like people do these ugly things, but how do I maintain sort of my sanity and maintain my trust and care for myself and other people in those moments? And you know, they're real tests, but it's obviously it would be much better if we just lived in a world where everyone treated each other with respect and where we didn't have to prepare and worry about these types of things. So, but that's you know, sadly not the reality that we live in at this point and may never be. So, but yeah, I'm sorry to hear that happened. Nothing, unfortunately, like, you know, if I think of something, I can say it later in the cast, but nothing. I don't think I have anything, you know, any earth-shattering advice. If anyone else has advice, you know, please feel free to help out, help our fellow friend out here. Nick said, other than your superhero stuff and Pokemon, what TCGs are you enjoying as a collector right now? So, I collect, the superhero stuff. I'm collecting, like, Topps wax boxes from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, which I really enjoy. And that's all sorts of different, you know, from, like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to Simpsons to, you know, Back to the Future to Smurfs to Mario. You know, there are tons of Donkey Kong. There are tons of those. There's fun. I collect DBZ. I collect Middle-earth. I collect Weiss Schwartz. I'm getting into a little bit. I collect Yu-Gi-Oh. I collect some Magic. So, a lot of things. Yeah. A lot. And I'm probably forgetting some. And then I just have, like, lots of random things. I have, like, Mega Man, Speed Racer, Austin Powers, like just a lot of like cheap fun things. I was thinking of actually maybe having Swami on at some point because we both love like so many different things, and we would get together some kind of interesting packs, and we would just kind of do a live stream and a hangout where we just open a lot of different product from all sorts of different card collecting sets and hobbies, and thought that that might be like a fun thing, and a little bit of like a fun change of pace. Martin Larson said, our base trainer says, football takes a backseat for Pokemon content. Martin Larson says, hey Jake, thanks for all your awesome content. I follow your channel passively a long time, so it's high time for my first question. Awesome. All right, I'll do my best not to let you down. What is your favorite binder set for a WotC, EX, and Diamond and Pearl era? Ooh, okay. Favorite binder sets. Okay, WotC, favorite binder set. Probably Skyridge, because I love the uncommons and the commons so much in Skyridge. As a set, that set from start to finish just has so many great arts. As I think with many of us, I don't love the border and the sort of off-centeredness of the card. Again, that's subjective. Everyone has their own opinions, but I love the art so much that I would probably choose Skyridge. But I think for the value, both Aquapolis and Expedition are so close to as great that there's so much great value in either of those sets as binder sets too. Those and then base set, because I just love base set. If I could only have one set, it would be base set. At the end of the day. Let's see, EX era, definitely EX Team Rocket returns for me. I just love, I love the dark cards, and the dark cards in reverse holo and regular holo, and I love the EX cards, the regular EX cards. I think the birds are just awesome. You know, obviously everyone loves the Snorlax and the Mewtwo. I do too, but I think some of the other ones are really underrated. I think the Suicune is such a great looking card. The birds trios are all great. Interestingly, I don't love the Entei. A lot of people do though. Which other ones do I really like? Scissor's cool. Hitmonchan, you know, those are all just great. There's so many great looking cards. And then the Dark Gyarados, the Dark Dragonair, Dragonite, and the Dark Dragonite. Well, the ones that I really like, off the top of my head, I like the Dark Octillery. I actually like the Octillery. I've always felt is a cool Pokemon. I like that. I don't know, something about the art of that Pokemon. I really like it. It's part of why I like that no one else seems to like it, because it's super cheap, and I really like it. So I have duplicates of a lot of his card because I just get them for so cheap and really like them. So there's so much great stuff there. And then Diamond and Pearl era. Oof. Maybe. So Majestic Dawn, I really like the Glaceon and the Leafeon level X. I know it's kind of a basic answer, but it's just the truth that I really like those cards. I just think they're beautiful. I really like those Pokemon. Those are sort of the first, like, chase card appearance. You obviously can get those in the regular holo as well, but those level X versions I just think are really awesome. So, great question. Looking at some WotC, Chevels asks a question, Jake. Looking at some WotC era Japanese holo slabs, I see that some CGC 9.5 going for less than half of a PSA 10. Even if some 10s are clearly not gem mint, do you think it'll stay that way? Okay. Japanese house. I see that some CGC 9.5 going for less than half. Okay. I don't know. I think that there's obviously some really nice value in those CGC 9.5s as collectors, as display pieces, because they're beautiful, pristine-looking cards, and they're going for so much less than the PSA 10s, which in some cases aren't even as nice. But I don't know. PSA 10s just seem to be getting harder and harder to get, and I'm not sure if that will affect the old PSA 10s. Only time will tell to see what all of that means. But it's something that I think you will be watching, I will be watching, the rest of us who are interested in the market will be watching over time. And I just don't know how to predict what market sentiment and the narrative that's going to be created out of that over time. Michael Barman says, why did the live from the other week get deleted? Launched someone to work, came home, and bam, it was gone. Yeah, so it's just got privated, just because it was an emotional and very personal cast. And for me, I just, we're going to definitely have Ryan on again. I really love Ryan. You know, he and I are now, you know, we're going to stay in touch and communicate. And, you know, we'll definitely have him on again for another discussion. It just got into sort of like a little bit of therapy stuff and just stuff that a lot of people reached out to me and like loved it and really enjoyed the conversation. And then I had, you know, some people struggling with addiction and some other sorts of things that I think it was really difficult for them to see that and experience that. And so I felt that the most respectful thing to do to all parties involved would just be to, you know, private that for those who saw it. I think a lot of it was really great conversation and certainly interesting and engaging and useful for people to see. But I also don't want people to be taking it and taking clips of it. And, you know, it's a very emotional discussion where a lot was said and certain things that other people could maybe create drama with. So that's why I privated it. And I'm just very careful with that sort of thing. So I really went on the safe side. And again, Ryan is going to be on again. We're friends. I'm sure he'll be on a repeat guest on this channel and platform over the years. So there's no concern that we won't, you know, that you guys won't get to ask him questions and engage with him. He's a great guy and, you know, definitely a cornerstone of the Pokemon world and the Pokemon community, and someone who I definitely want to have on and, you know, continue to have on. So, PokeVest, what is your take on DPBW era holo cards as investments? Nearman copies are available 50 cents to $5 each, and that seems really odd to me, especially because of Gen 4-5 rookie cards. Yeah, I agree. I generally agree with you. I think that the fact that those are going for so little when certain modern cards that are going to be vastly way more overprinted, raw are going for like $20, $30, $40, and those cards are going for, you know, 50 cents to $5 in good condition. Not only is it going to be harder to find any of those cards, but it's going to be particularly hard to find those cards in like near mint and plus condition versus any of these modern things. So I agree with you. Is it a good investment? I have no idea. But as far as a collector and how I would evaluate these things, I would be in line with you. Sounds like PokeVest. And as you said, particularly the Gen 4, Gen 5, like rookie first appearance type things. Again, I think over time that it just makes sense that narrative will matter. Or like I'll be the only one saying it, and then that's fine. And if no one agrees and no one finds value in that, it does. Like if you don't find value in the first appearance ever of a Pokemon or a card, that's 100% fine. I find value in firsts because to me it's historic and part of history and marks that card, that art, as the first time we're seeing that in the English side, for example, or the first time we're seeing it in a specific way. And as a collector, those are the types of things that get me excited and that I enjoy. So, and I just think that there will be enough people who experience it like that it will matter more and more over time. Bronx Crampton said, our basement father said Fusion Strike Print run is set to be low. Have you heard anything like this other than from Taco Rudy? I have not, but I also have not really like put out feelers to people I talk to in the Pokemon community about it. I'm sure he's being honest and accurate. And Rudy, although I don't think Rudy necessarily is someone who I would listen to on his instincts on like what are people going to like in the Pokemon community, he is absolutely someone I would listen to in terms of talking about like estimated like how much is going to be out there, how easy is it going to get. And I think that in the short term, that's so important. on prices. So he's someone I would definitely take very seriously. Eusebius said, he said there was a printing issue with Frozen Strike, but who knows? Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I heard him say that as well. In his Patreon, I believe. Wingle90 said, appreciate you still taking time to do this every Sunday. You got it, Wingle. And I miss some, and I apologize for people who look forward to them. I look forward to them too. But yeah, doing my best to find time to do them, as well as balance my other things that need to be priority, including my relationships and non-work things. Robert Novak says, has S. Pratt ever not liked anything that's old in Japanese? Let me think. So I think it's a joke, but I'm going to try to answer that seriously. I'm going to try to think. So, to be honest with you, I've almost never heard Scott ever say that he doesn't like something outside of Champion's Path. And then, occasionally I know, and now I'm not a patron member of his. I know that he does a overrated, underrated. So now he's constantly saying things that are underrated. So that's very different. But in sort of the future and the history of watching his videos, I feel like, and I think, understandably, I think he's also trying to build up the hobby and talk positively about things and build up confidence and all that sort of thing, which I think is good for the hobby overall. So I imagine when he doesn't like something or he thinks something's overpriced or negative, often he just probably says nothing. Even though I'm sure he does feel that way, and I'm sure that there are vintage Japanese cards that he probably feels that way about. I'm sure. Chief Kane says, hello everyone. Hey. Dragon Ball Z says, Jake, my new TCG was released successfully on Kickstarter last week. We raised over 1,000%, and I'm making the samples right now. Wow, congratulations, Zaid. If you want to share that with people here, you're happy to, as long as it's not over and over and over again. I hope it's successful for you, and that that's awesome. That's amazing. Congratulations. You can feel free to share the name, obviously, with people in chat, and see if they want to go check it out. Black Ash Ketchum says, thanks, Jake. Appreciate your thoughts. You're very welcome. Car1988 says, how much did the Jungle and Fossil boxes go for? So I think they went for, and this is on auction last night at Golden, I think they went, I want to say 13-ish, 14-ish thousand after buyer's premium. 12, 13, 14, maybe some even a little bit lower. Somewhere in there, though. I'm not sure where they all ended up. There are a lot of them. Aiden M says, hey Jake, what are your thoughts on the, and I wouldn't take my word for any of that, I would just go on Golden and double check, of course. That's my recollection. Aiden M says, hey Jake, what are your thoughts on the Bills PC trainer card, which was necessary to obtain the Misaki promos? I think it's got a unique history and story. Also got good ties with the Game Boy games. 100% agree. You nailed it. Josh Harris, Jake. So, and to me, the fact that cards like that don't have as much maybe value, or it's because people don't know about it. And there's so many people who love the Misaki promos or saw those and were like, oh my god, must have them, and heard people talking up those cards that don't know the story of how those were actually released, and then didn't get the PC, Bill's PC card because of that, etc. And over time, those pieces of information will be more widely circulated, and then probably the card value will reflect that. Will reflect some of that value. Josh Harris. So, for example, if that vending series card is going for similarly priced to another vending series card that is of similar art and general interest, that would be strange, right? I think that it should probably have a little bit of a higher value because of that connection it had to the Misaki promos, because I feel that way as a collector for me. Josh Harris says, Jake, WoW TCG or LOTR TCG for collectability? So I don't do really either, personally. The problem with the LOTR TCG, which is what I would definitely do because I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, and I've played World of Warcraft, but I'm not like a huge fan of the lore or the story, whereas I'm a big LOTR fan, Lord of the Rings. I don't. I like. Generally speaking, I like things that are drawn. That have art that are drawn, and even better, I like when that art is drawn specifically for the card. And for the LOTR, it's like reprints of like the movie scenes and just the characters on them, and that's never been as enjoyable to me for whatever reason. That being said, I still like it, and I still think it's cool and fun and collectible, just not as much as something like Middle Earth. It's just more appealing to me, the Middle Earth card game, because of that. I don't know too much about WoW TCG or LOTR TCG for that reason. I do know that WoW TCG has some like pretty difficult cards, I believe, to pull, but they're not very expensive. I just like never taken off. You know, could have some good investment potential. I really don't know. It would have to do with how much is out there, and it would have to do with, are there going to be influencers? Is there going to be a catalyst for getting all those World of Warcraft players and kids and other sorts of things to engage with the cards and collect and enjoy the cards. So Chief Kane says he likes the LOTR better for probably a similar reason as me, just that he has connections to that world a lot more than World of Warcraft. I mean, it's part of why I like some of these. Like, there's a lot of anime that I really like, and I'm looking at things like, you know, Weiss Schwarz and you know, what's going to be out there for card collecting related to some of these anime things that I like, because I love the richness of the stories and the character development. I would love to own like really cool looking chase cards of, you know, hard to pull rare cards of some of my favorite characters from these shows. That would appeal to me a lot as a collector, and I think a lot of other people. And that a lot of that has to do with the great world building that's done in these in the manga and the anime. George Watt says, Jake, I'd like to just echo that comment from before, that quality over quantity, and your content has so much of the former. Appreciate that, George. Yeah. Yes, I feel like I always want to make free content as well for people who don't want to pay for the Patreon stuff. So I do feel pressure to balance that and not do too much stuff that's just for the paid, and still have like very good, like useful, you know, consistent stuff here that's always free for the community as well. So that's kind of where I'm at, trying to balance those two things. Let's see. Dan said, thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh? So thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh? I am not far from a Yu-Gi-Oh expert. I feel like I know, you know, just a little bit. There's why, when you say thoughts on Yu-Gi-Oh, I could take that in like a million directions because it's so broad. But I guess I'm just gonna answer it from a collector. I like Yu-Gi-Oh. I loved the anime growing up. I think the cards are really cool. I don't need the first edition crazy limited stuff in those cards to really enjoy it. So for me, I'm able to enjoy and engage in that hobby without the really crazy first edition limited stuff, because I loved Pokemon even more, and particularly the cards, because I never actually really collected the Yu-Gi-Oh cards, so I'm not that connected to the Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm a lot more connected to just the anime series, which of course has the cards, and thus I do like the cards. Pokemon cards were such an important part of my childhood that for me, getting the rarest and most expensive and craziest Chase 1 versions of those is where I choose to spend most of my time and energy and money, rather than the Yu-Gi-Oh! Whereas for the Yu-Gi-Oh! I just want like cheaper versions, whether it's getting it in Korean, like another language, just cheaper versions of all of my favorite cards is enough for me as a collector. Whereas in Pokemon, that's where I wanted to put my investment money and real collecting money into. John said, Jake, I personally don't understand why any world stamp except top 32 would go for less than PSA 9 unlimited WotC. What's the rationale? Yep. I mean, the rationale is just that people want their childhood cards, and one, it's that the vast majority of the hobby doesn't know what a Worlds promo is yet, and might never get that far down the rabbit hole. And two, those who do know about it but still would choose the unlimited PSA 9 WotC is just because they don't feel any connection, and they don't want to collect any trophy cards or any of those types of cards because they just want the cards that they had when they were a kid. And I get that. I like all of it in both. But I completely agree with you, John. For me personally as a collector, the rarity of those cards is so much more intriguing to me, and I pay so much more for that because there's so many less to go around, whereas I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of PSA, not PSA necessarily, but like unlimited WotC hollows, and whether I have it in like an 8 or a 9 or even a 10, it doesn't matter that much to me as a collector. For me, the absolute rarity always trumps in terms of what I'm willing to pay for condition rarity. So hopefully that makes sense to people, and I do think the market will reflect that over time. But Bronx 718 New York City says, great to see everyone, and caught your live. Nice to have you here. Pat Flynn in the chat says, hey Jake, hey everyone. Hey Pat, good to see you dropping by. Hope you're doing well over there on your channel. Let's see, Chief Can say not related to Z yet. What else we got here? Lukey Truck says, people might connect to the Sun and Moon Sword and Shield sets because of the pandemic. Tough time for a lot of people. Yeah, going to kind of what we talked about in the beginning today. I would never want, I have to be really careful with my words, right? When I say that no one out there could care as much, because there are millions and millions of Pokemon fans who could have, and some people within that are going to have tremendous connections to some of these sets for various reasons. I just think it's going to be a lot lower, and I think it's going to probably take a lot more time for those connections to really be fostered and for those people to revisit those sets years later multiple times, and yet the prices are already so high. That type of thing is what I would say. Ali Review says, the way you described how you and your generation feels about WotC is the same way me and my generation feel about DP black-white era cards. I feel like my generation is growing into adulthood right now. Yeah, so I think that's definitely true. There's just a lot less people, but those sets might have been printed a lot less. So two things to say about that, Holly Reviews, because I think it's a great point. The reason I own so much like Diamond and Pearl era stuff, and I invested so heavily into Diamond and Pearl, and invested so heavily into black and white cards and PSA cards, many of them, is because I understood that, because I was talking to younger people who loved that. And I was very bullish on Pokemon in the long term, and thought that those sets had such low print runs, and that the people who were interested in those sets were not yet back into Pokemon, and also were not yet really have the spending power to drive those prices up high. So I want to put that all that out there. All that being said, what I'm really talking about when I'm talking about this is like things like from 2016, 2007, 2018. People could only possibly have 5 years of history and connection to those cards. I have, 20 years, right? So many of us have so many years, and it also hit us when we were in childhood. So for these black and white and Sword and Shield stuff, there may be kids today who are collecting and investing in these products, right now, and who in 10, 15, 20 years, they feel the exact same way that I feel about my WotC cards, they feel about those cards. But those are not the people buying those $3,000 boxes right now, right? The people who are buying those $3,000 boxes are adults who are speculating, in my opinion, on what kids are going to want in the future, and are not actually buying those cards because they value them at the current value. And that is going to be very problematic, because those kids are not going to, if those kids even ever want those items, which is a big if, it's going to be 20 to 30 years, or maybe not that long, maybe even 10 years, 10 to 15 years, till enough of them are going to have any sort of spending power. And the price is already so high. How do people think that's a good investment? So that's where I come from on that stuff. And I just really worry that people get caught up in that. and in the high prices, and don't think clearly about what people actually really like. So what you're doing is exactly right, Ali, which is I'm using... I absolutely love, you're saying, right, these eras, because I connected with them as a kid. I played the video games, and I want the first appearances. I want the 4th and 5th gen Pokemon are my Pokemon. You absolutely are going to have great insight into those eras, and in investing in those eras and understanding which ones are going to be the most investable, which ones are not going to be. So 100%. And the thing, Ali, is that those eras are some of the lowest printed eras also of Pokemon cards versus these eras, which have tremendously huge print runs. So if we compare it to sports cards in the 90s, for example, which had really huge print runs, there are so many cards that would be so valuable if there weren't so many printed. And we might see a similar thing happen to a lot of these cards now, that people will have good connections to these things in 10, 20 years and really want them, but there's so much supply that it's not really ever able to get up to $10,000 a box, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're paying $3,000 a box, and that box doesn't get to $10,000 a box or $15,000 a box in 20 years, that was a terrible investment, just to be frank, because if you had put that in something that was going to get you compound interest and pay you a dividend, and you were going to make 8 to 12% compound interest, you would be making far more money than that when you also include the dividend that you're going to get and the compound interest that you're going to get off of that item. So that's where I'm coming from with that. And I think that would be like unbelievable if people were, would pay that much money for those sorts of things. So hopefully that's clear. Giraffiteca says, "Hey Jake, what are your thoughts on the victory medal cards?" They're okay. Don't love them, don't hate them. I think that they're pretty cool, pretty good. They're also fairly pricey. They're probably priced about right, if I were to have to guess. But I don't have strong, one way or the other feelings on them. What box is going for 3 to 5K that is at the most 5 years old? So, for example, like some Japanese products like Pokekayun is a good example. Other boxes that are only 5 years old that are going for like 3 to 5, like Flash Fire was, right? I'd have to pull up my list of booster boxes. But if we put it to like 2 to 5, there are going to be a number more that get in there from, but again, first half of XY, fairly low printed, but still, I just don't, I just think people are buying those because they're speculating. But to be honest, I think that sealed product is better than some of these PSA values and PSA cards that people are buying. As I said in my modern video, some of the PSA values, particularly out of like the brand new sets, are the worst. Basic Trainer says, everyone should always be able to buy Modern to open and buy comfortably without having a second guess. That's what I so badly wish for everyone, like every person in the hobby, like so we can just all open it and enjoy it and not stress so much. Z&G says, confirm Jake has Tom Brady rookie card. I wish. I wish I had that card that just sold for like $2 million. So I'm going to do a few more in the middle here, and then we'll jump to the bottom for just to see what people are responding to. Because now I'm so far back in the chat that some of these may be less relevant, and people may want to ask new things. Non-Pokemon related question. Adam asks, "What's your thoughts on the Lakers roster?" I think it's the first time I've ever been excited to watch a sports season unfold. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see Russ. Who is it now? Carmelo Anthony, Russ, LeBron, and Anthony Davis all play on the same team. Be interesting. I have a lot of faith in LeBron James as just someone who can win and figure out how to make things work with other people. And so I think if it wasn't for him on that team, I'd be worried for the based on the other people, particularly with Anthony Davis having injury issues and some stuff over this past year. But because LeBron is there, I think it'll work out. Like I just have a lot of faith in him, and he's caused me so much pain as a Celtics fan that I just think he'll probably make it. He just figures out ways to make it work, even when teams don't really make sense or aren't formulated in the best possible way. All right, I'm going to do 2 more questions here, and then I'm going to jump to the bottom. So if people want to start asking questions at the bottom pretty soon, you can. Travel says, anyone remember when James showed he bought a bunch of Seal Blackstar 13? Yeah, Venusaur, yeah. I think that Z&G made a video just showing, like, he talked about one specific item once, and then it was bought out, like, a few hours after. Usebe says, what's your favorite White Schwartz set? I don't have a favorite yet because I'm still pretty new to it, and I'm still actually accumulating some sealed product. I'm going to open some of it. I'm going to see. I've watched a lot of openings and engaged with people in the community a little bit just to get a sense of what's going on, but I haven't actually had a lot of product in my hands and haven't opened a lot myself, so I don't know what set's going to, like, make me, that I'm going to have that most positive reaction to. I will say that like some of the animes I prefer over, like I really like Sword Art Online. I bought some of, like, the Overlord set because I liked that anime that anime when it came out a few years ago. I like Attack on Titan. I'm going to get some of that and open it. But I'm going to get some of a lot of different of the products. I like to have a little bit of everything just to kind of enjoy and test out what I like, what I don't like. Xseed said, Jake, what do you think about Super Dragon Ball Heroes? Bandai cards exclusive to Japan, but they're trying to bring the game to the US. The art is fantastic. I'm not sure I know what it is. I might know. So I know that. So these modern cards, Xseed, if you're still in chat, you can say it at the bottom. Just give me a year on these, and then I don't always know things by name. Sometimes I need to know them by, like, the way that they look, or by the years tend to be how I memorize things. Again, at the bottom. Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump to the bottom of the chat to hang out with all of you guys. I apologize for those who I did not answer question. I probably skipped over. There are probably like 30 or so questions in the middle that just didn't get answered today. My apologies. I like to try to answer things fully. But let's jump to the bottom. We have about 26 minutes left today, so I also just want to, like, hang out with you guys a little bit, see what people are saying, any comments on anything I said today, etc., etc. Let's see. MetaZoo box break anytime soon? No, I'm not going to be cracking any MetaZoo anytime soon, I don't think. At least I don't have any plans to. Brett St. John says, thoughts around vending series. Think there is a lot being graded now. Pop is still very low there. I like vending series, but there is still quite a lot out there. They're probably fairly well priced, but I think they're good cards, and I think over time they're going to do well, and they're important to the history of the hobby. So I like them overall. Sadaharu says, Pokekayun does have those great Flareon and Sylveon EX cards, though, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, the thing is I really like Pokekayun. And so the Radiant collection in Pokekayun is much better looking to me than the Generations Radiant. I didn't really like the Generations Radiant collection. I don't like the way those cards look. I know that Generations is skyrocketed in price, and people have decided now that it's valuable, and everyone's picking up packs, and you have big streamers telling other people that they're picking up packs, which I think is causing more people to pick up packs. You have big channels doing that. I don't like Generations as a set. I don't think it's very good on the English side, and I think that those packs are kind of everywhere, and they're not. This is not very good. So again, sorry for the negative opinion for those who are buying into it. Think for yourself. Don't just listen to influencers. Buy things that you actually like. Don't buy things that other people like are telling you is good. Okay. That being said, right, I agree with you. I think Pokekayun at $300 to $500 at this time in history is where I would feel like where I would price that. And to me, that would be something really expensive, but but fun and enjoyable at 3 to 500. At 3,000, it's crazy. So, for me, there are lots of examples like that. I'm picking on that one today a little bit. And my point in illustrating this, I will say it one more time, is think for yourself. Feel free to disagree with me. If you love that set, go out and buy it today. Buy a ton of it if you think it's investable. It shouldn't matter what I say, but my speculation is that a lot of people buying products like that have not been in this hobby that long and don't really, are just kind of have a lot of money, and they're just putting it into things that have gone up a lot, and or that other people are telling them to put it into, or that people that they trust are buying. And I think that that's a recipe for disaster, both in terms of potentially potentially prices falling on those types of items. They absolutely might not, but maybe even more importantly, you just owning a bunch of really expensive things that you don't even like, that you don't even appreciate or care that much about. Everything in my collection I care a lot about and I really like, and I don't care what anyone else says about it. I like it. I get value and appreciation and enjoyment from it. Okay. What else we got here? How do I feel about lower graded first edition Charizards from base set? They will hold the same value 8, 9, 10s do. I think that the prices for first edition base Charizards, they all kind of probably make sense in terms of what the rest of the hobby does, and they've sold so much at those prices that I think if anything in the hobby has established price points from PSA 10 to PSA 1, it's the first edition Charizard. So that's what I would say. For me personally, the 10 is very, very expensive. As a collector, I don't need to own that 10. I'm happy with like a near mint version. I would much rather spend that money on a trophy card for me personally, right? I'd much rather have like a 6, 7, 8 PSA first edition Charizard and then spend the 10 money on a truly absolute rare card that there are only a few in the world, than just paying up for condition rarity. Tommy Fogel says, what do you think regarding Whatnot as a platform compared to eBay? Is it the future? I haven't really spent too much time on Whatnot. Obviously have a good friend in Pokemon Radar who's done a lot of work there, and consulting with them, I believe. So, but I don't know too much about it. I think it's sort of hopefully it's a good, safe, reliable option for people that creates liquidity in the market. I think anything that creates more liquidity and allows people to buy and sell in a way that is safe and where no one's being taken advantage of and people are protected is a plus for the hobby. So, but I don't know too much specifics about it. I have a lot of feelings and a lot of concerns about online pack streaming channels or like any sort of auction houses, auctioning things off and then opening them and breaking them or like whatever it is, because I think that I think that a lot of people are doing it because they're addicted right now to it and they can't stop and they'd like to stop, and they're not making good financial decisions on these types of things. That's my personal opinion. And so I just think those spaces have to be like really careful and have a responsibility to their audiences and the people they're selling packs to or selling product to. Personal responsibility is really important. So each of us have to be responsible for what we're buying. So if you're going on one of these channels and you're purchasing something, like you have personal responsibility in that. But I think also the streamer has personal responsibility to sell responsibly. And if they feel like someone's making poor choices or is out of control, I personally think that, just as a bartender might cut someone off or a casino has rules or different things in place to help protect people, I view these things as sort of online casinos. And I think with that, there needs to be, you have to hope that the casino manager or the dealer or whatever cares about the people there and is trying to create entertainment and enjoyment for them. and creating an environment where people are making good, healthy decisions for themselves, not creating an environment where people are all hyped up and they're experiencing these dopamine rushes and they way overspend. Dragon Ball Z says, "Hey Jake, my TCG is called Otherworld TCG." And very cool. All right, I'll keep a lookout for it. Have I opened any Digimon? I have opened no Digimon. I should open some Digimon at some point, because I don't love Digimon, but I did watch it a little bit as a kid, and it might be fun to revisit it a little bit in cards. Bendover says, "Do you think the Flareon, Jolteon, Vaporeon ES collection boxes were released as separate products because Pokemon Company knew the older generation wanted them the most?" I'm sure that they thought that it would do very well, and that they're going to be strong products that people like. Car1988 said the Bucks are going to win again this year. Maybe. I think they got pretty lucky with some Nets injuries. I think that Nets juggernaut was going to obliterate every team until those injuries. I don't think the first game in that Nets Bucks series was a fluke. I think that's what the rest of that series was going to look like. Pete Dachu says, "Jake, just picked up the 05 and 06 staff cards this weekend. Have you? Congratulations, first of all. Love those cards. Have you finally completed your full staff card collection? Anything in particular you're looking for to collect with regard to Worlds promos?" Always looking for more Worlds promos. It's all about price point. I missed an auction like a few months ago that I would have 100% bought with a ton of Worlds promos. Someone got a great deal. Wish I had seen it. I just, didn't see it, unfortunately. So I'm always looking to pick up more of those, all depending on price point and depending on how much cash I have at any one given time. I prefer the players to the staff cards for me personally. I like collecting the player ones better, but I also love the staff ones, and so I'm happy to get any staff one. And I love the world stamped ones too. I think are really cool. So without any staff or any stamp, it all just depends on price point. Brent says, "Hey Jake, thanks for doing these lives. Just purchased my dream card, the Umbreon Play promo. Congratulations. And finished my play set." Wow, that's awesome. That's a very difficult set to complete, particularly at this point. "If you could get any higher end prize trophy card, which would you pick?" 1997 Pikachu trophy, the whole set. So I don't know which one I prefer. I kind of like the third place. The little chunky weird art, but probably the first place. But those three would be the cards that I would go after, and then behind that it's the snap cards. Those are my favorite, and then the snap cards are close second. And believe it or not, I really love the Art Academy cards. But they're so much cheaper that if I could just for free have anything. I, would go for some of those kind of more expensive, older, higher end stuff. Bryce Miller says, "Hey Jake, are you collecting any MetaZoo or Flesh and Blood?" A little bit, Bryce, a little bit, but very little. And I'm just sort of mainly enjoying it from the sidelines with a little bit of buying and collecting going on, but nothing significant, because it's just very expensive, and I have so many things I like that it's sort of I don't want to spend. If I spend money there, then I'm taking it away from something else. So okay, let's see what else we got. We're almost at the bottom of the chat, which is impressive for me, at least. Not impressive for the average YouTuber out there, but Tell Me Focus says, "Thanks, Jake. I feel," and I meant that just because I'm slow. For those who didn't understand why I said that, I'm very slow at getting through all the questions. Tell Me Focus says, "Thanks, Jake. I feel I learn a lot from you even when you speak little about a subject. I admire your mindset. Your main career is having a conversation with people, right?" Yeah, my primary career is I have individual conversations and group conversations with people all day. Yes, sir. So I have 8 years of, or almost 9 years of practice doing that, which I think probably helped prepare me for leading or whatever discussions like this, and or being able to interview people and have them on the channel. And really, my interview style, I don't really interview people. I bring them on for discussions and conversations, which I think are often more interesting, engaging, and useful content, because it creates, having two people kind of discuss and go back and forth creates, I think, more interesting and deeper kind of digging answers, rather than just having one person kind of answer and then you move on to the next question, they answer, you move on to the next question. I think asking follow-up questions and also sharing your opinion can help get those conversations deeper. Ernesto Alvarez says, question, hi Jake, what are your thoughts about the Expedition and E-Series sets as an investment? I see low pops and low prices both in English and Japanese, and it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, I think within Pokemon, those are some of the best cards for the best value, particularly in the set world. Among them, I think that the original EX era with the Gold Stars, and I think some Neo stuff is probably, I would say, similarly. But and then I think with the falling prices of some Jungle Fossil and the gyms and base set, I think that stuff is becoming more, attractive again as well. Bren, I agree. Third place art is the best. What did you think of the Full Art Academy set that sold last night on Golden? I wanted to buy that, guys. I really wanted to buy that set, but it went for a lot. Went for a very high amount, and I guess I'm not completely surprised, because they're great and they're rare and they're so hard to get, and to complete the entire set in one go, I wouldn't be surprised if like Steve Aoki or some big influencer bought them and they have a lot of money and they were just able to get them all at once, and now they have one of the hardest sets in the whole hobby to complete all in one go. But yeah, I mean, it got a very high price point. Whoever bought that really paid like full price on it. Instead of, usually when you buy a number of cards like that, particularly some in lower grades, you can usually get some sort of deal, but they really paid full price in terms of what they've been selling for, and they've been selling for a lot. As I said, a lot of trophy cards went for, that was an all-time high. Like Art Academy cards, like right now, are at an all-time high in terms of price point, which should show you something. And I've been talking about the Art Academy cards on my channel the entire time, right? Like these rare modern, there's certain rare items that just are going to withstand the downward pressure, and supply waves from the hobby, and we've sort of been seeing that. Now, you got to be careful on items like that with liquidity, and there's a lot to talk about, but yeah. Jamie Scott said, I find that I get a lot of enjoyment in buying and selling, but not so much collecting. I have a relatively small personal collection and find that my interests change after a short time. Any thoughts? I think, do what makes you happy. And I think it's great because you don't have to worry about like hoarding issues or problems that some of us collectors have to worry about, where we get very attached to items and we hold on to things that aren't good for us to hold on to, whether it's because we should sell them, because we could take that money and do things with our lives that is going to make them better, but we have a hard time selling, or because we overspend on things because we really need we have such huge goals and we want sort of everything and we want to hold everything all the time. There can be a lot of problems with that. So it's great that you can avoid that, and that you enjoy the buying and selling process. Pete.chu says, do you pick up any of the JR Stamp Rally vintage cards? I've always found these similar to Misaki and know you have a good amount of those. Yeah, I have a complete set of those. I like them a lot. Yeah, they're great looking cards. I would not, the Misakis to me, they're not the JR, Rally stuff. Yeah, I don't put them quite on the level as Misaki for me in terms of, I think, historic interest and as much, people are engaged with, and age, right? These types of things, how old they are, but I think that they're cool. Kai Oak Bacon says, hey, Jake. Hey, Kai. Revelation. Let's see. We've got about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to try to run through some of these questions here. Revelation says, hey, Jake. Very specific question. Is there any reason why some PSA graded fossil Japanese cards say 1996 and some say 1997, even though they're the same set with the same copyright year on the back? I am not familiar with that. I do not know. Sorry. I've never seen that or noticed that. If anyone has an answer to that, please feel free to share it. Vandy Flips Pokemon says, hey Jake, do you have any opinions on the graded Sports Illustrated market? Went down a rabbit hole last week, so many cool magazines to collect. Never even looked at it. Never even looked at it. I know a little bit about magazines and a little bit about like which ones are pricey and which ones aren't pricey, and done a tiny bit of research in that, but very, very little. But it's awesome that you're going down into that. I think that learning about markets like that can help you in any market. And it's fun, right? It's just fun. As you said here, you went down the rabbit hole. That implies to me like interest and passion and enjoyment. And that's how it feels to me too. When I'm researching something or learning about something, it's exciting. George Ross says, Jake, do you pick up slabs from lesser-known grading companies to cross into PSA just because they will sell higher? So I don't personally do that very much. But I think that people can certainly make money. A lot of people from the sports card world definitely do that. And it's something that I have done a couple of times when there were like really great opportunities. And then I do have some like BGS 9.5s that I think could potentially cross over to PSA 10 that I may eventually send in. But Nizu says, favorite Pokemon illustrator. You know, I've been asked that. I don't have a favorite illustrator. So any answer I give you just like wouldn't be completely accurate, so I won't give you one. You say yours is Atsuko Nishida or, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, Kasube. I'm not the best at pronouncing things. George Ross says, what percentage of the PSA price would you pay for the slab from a lesser-known company? What percentage of the PSA price do you pay for the slab? It's going to depend on the company, and most importantly, it's going to depend on the card. Because, you know, you want to buy the card and not just the grade. And so there could be a really good-looking card in like an SGC slab that I would pay, you know, very high prices, or almost as high, or maybe even as high as PSA prices, for example. Jay, the breakers who have the core group of people who spend tremendous amounts of money every time they stream should have some discussion with the people that they aren't spending their money the best. Jay, yeah. So, you know, it's a tough subject. It's a tough subject, but I do think that, and I think a lot of these streamers have gotten better. Like in the beginning, there were a number of people who were giving financial advice and selling people packs, and all the financial advice was always like, everything's great and it's going to go up, right? Like, and I think that all of that kind of spurred that, you know, investing, and we're going to become poke rich, we're all going to be rich. And like some of it was kind of like a meme joke, but I also like felt like, no, it was like very real for people, and people were really excited, and it got the dopamine flowing, and one person was getting rich, and that was the streamer who was streaming. Everyone else was losing money. And even the people who made money because they bought a bunch of stuff when Pokemon was really low, they would have made a lot more money if they hadn't been buying and opening packs, or buying like way overpriced cards and packs and things from these people. So there are a number of people who watch these streams that get great enjoyment from them and are spending within their means. And it's great for the hobby and great for them that they have an opportunity. So let's say like PokeRev's stream, for example. I'll talk about him because, as I said, you know, I talk about openly people who like I respect and admire, and I think have done amazing things in the Pokemon hobby. And PokeRev Nick is one of those people. So, you know, he to me has a tremendous responsibility around that. You know, and you know where that line is, I don't know. You know, that's for him to decide and for his audience to decide. What I will say is, I imagine there are a ton of people who are buying from PokeRev who are getting great value for their money because they love him, they love the community, they love the excitement, they love the enjoyment, right? And they're getting real packs. They're not getting scammed, fake packs. And PokeRev is, they love having it opened by Nick and talked about by Nick, and they love everyone getting excited in chat, right? And they are aware that they could buy that pack for maybe cheaper somewhere else, but they want to do it because they understand all those other things, and they're making those purchases with all that understanding, and they're not addicted to it, and they're spending within their means. Now, you're going to have other people who know all of that, but are also probably very addicted to all of that. They're very addicted to getting calls out by him, they want to be friends with him, they want a parasocial relationship with him, they want, and that isn't on PokeRev. That is sort of an unavoidable, I think, reality of being a big streamer or being a famous person or what have you. And it's up to him to decide sort of what to do with that. And I don't think that Nick is someone who, I don't know him personally, but I know people who know him personally, is someone who would ever want to take advantage of any person, right? I would venture a guess. So I think that it's a difficult situation. I'd love to have him on the channel. When Ryan was on here, we talked about that. I'd love to have, if you're ever watching this, we'd love to have you on the channel if you want to ever have like a candid discussion about that, about, are you concerned about those things? What do you think about it? Or do you think it's just full, like, do you have responsibility for any of that? Or is it just on the consumer and it's, because I get the argument that it's not your job to police who wants to buy from you. It's your job to create a really good product. And then if people want it, you've done a good job of creating something they want, and just let the free market decide. I mean, for example, right, like, companies exist in that everywhere. I mean, let's take companies that make soda, right? I mean, soda has sugar in it. Sugar is addicting. People drink soda because it releases dopamine in their brain, and they enjoy it, and they get a high from it. Should we ban all soda companies, and are soda companies evil? Like, you're going to have people who are on the side of, like, they are evil, they know what they're doing, and they're making money off of poisoning people. And then you're going to have people on the other side that say, like, no, they have absolutely no responsibility in there, and, like, it's complete personal responsibility and choice. And, like, for me, I'm somewhere in the middle, and I don't know where it lies, and I don't think they're easy solutions, because I also think that drinking alcohol or gambling or drinking sugar or these types of things, they also bring pleasure into life, which can be nice. It just can also be dangerous if it's too much, and if people don't have balance in those relationships. So enough said on all of that, but I guess the point of all that is it's complicated. I don't necessarily have the answers, and if I were in his position, I might see it differently than I see it now, because I would know the ins and outs of all the difficult things that he does, and all the difficult things he has to deal with, and all the stress and all the pressure, and the fact that he probably thinks about all this really carefully and is really empathetic and compassionate and is doing the best he can, right? You just don't know until you talk to someone or you're in their shoes exactly what it's like to be them. So, all right, guys, so we are at 5 o'clock. So I think we are going to end the stream there. Really appreciate, everyone hanging out with me today. It's a pleasure, as always, being with y'all. Great to see so many familiar names. And so next week it'll be private we'll be doing the Patreon thing next weekend, but then the following weekend, hopefully I will be back here. And also I'm hoping to make a couple videos. I've actually shot like 7 videos that I've never released, at different times. And I think it could be funny to release some like old videos in the future that like where I had made like predictions type of things like a long time ago that I didn't want to make predictions because I didn't want to have an effect on the market. So I don't know. That could be fun at some point. Probably won't do that anytime soon, but at some point, I think it'll also be interesting. I also want to make some videos and do some videos on some vintage topics. Potentially haven't done that in a little bit. And otherwise, yeah, it's just a pleasure hanging out with you all, and I'm glad you all enjoyed the stream. and I will see you all again soon. All right. Have a great rest of your Sundays, and hope everyone